Hi, this is Mr. Kinnemer, and we're going to be talking about Chapter 4, Section 3 in our algebra book, Patterns in Nonlinear Functions. Now, you can see this first page is your vocabulary review. Take a few minutes and complete this before you start in on this lesson. It will help you remember some of the things you'll need to know in order to learn this new material on nonlinear functions. In our first problem here, classifying functions as linear or nonlinear, we're given a data table about cutting a paper in half. In your data tables, your input of your function, I need to turn on my pencil, is your x. The output of your function is your y. So this brings us to where we can complete these ordered pairs in number 7 of our notes. Notice that the 1 corresponds with the 1 in the input of our function. The 1/2 corresponds with the 1/2 of the y in our function. So go ahead and take a second and fill in every blank that I have so we can see where we've got the 2 in the 1/4, the 3 in the 1/8, the 4 in the 1/16. After you complete that, go ahead and plot them on the graph. So we remember when we graph points, we always start at the middle and go right or left first and then up. So there's my point for this point here. 1, 1.5 corresponds with this point here on our graph. The next one is 2. So I'm going to start at the center, go over 2, and up to 1/4 because my x is 2 and my y is 1/4. Next is 3, then up to 1/8, which is halfway between 1/4 and 0. The next one is 4 and 1/16, which is halfway between this first line and my axis. Next, let's determine if this is linear or nonlinear. And we remember from our previous lesson that linear functions go in straight lines. This has a bit of a curve to it. Therefore, this is nonlinear. Take a few minutes and complete 10 and 11 on your own. Please give your best effort, and if you need to ask a question, please do so tomorrow. In problem number 2, we're going to represent patterns and nonlinear functions. So we're going to use these 3 figures here and our data table to represent how many objects compared to how many branches. Take a second and fill in number 12 and describe the pattern that you find in this data table. And remember, we're trying to compare how we got from our input to our output. Once we have determined what our pattern will look like, let's use the words figure and new branches to complete our diagram. So the number of figures and the number of branches equals 3. So let's figure out what equation we need in order to figure out our figure number and our branch number. So if we look back at our data table, we notice that to go from our input of 1, we have an output of 3. If we have an input of 2, we get an output of 9. An input of 3 gives us an output of 27. And don't forget that this is our x and this is our y. Look back down here to question number 14. And we notice that y equals 3x is the equation that relates our input to our output. So on number 15, when x equals 4, y is going to equal 81, because 3 to the 4th power is 81. When x equals 5, y will equal 243, because 3 to the 5th power is 243. Filling in these last two coordinates will allow us to fill in each ordered pair. So take a second to do that. Now, let's graph our ordered pairs we've come up with. So we have our first ordered pair, which is 1, 3, will be graphed on the 1, barely above the axis. The second point, 2, 9, is just about in the same spot because of the scale of our graph. That's a little high, but that's okay. 327 is in relatively the same spot again. So we're going to count 3 to the right and go up 27, which is relatively the same area. Our fourth spot, 481, means we're going to count from the origin over 4 and up to 81, which will be just under 100. And then our fifth point, 5, 243, we'll count over 5 and up to 243, so that will be just under the 250 mark. And then we're going to connect them. So, you can think of a function as a rule that you apply to the input in order to get the output. You can describe a nonlinear function with words, an equation, or just as you did with linear functions. On problem number 3, we're going to write a rule to describe a nonlinear function. In this case, we have 5 ordered pairs. I'm going to flip the page because it will continue on the back. As you can see on number 17, I filled in all the blanks here that we had from the previous page to make it a little easier. So what I need you to do is you need to complete 18 and 19. On 18, use words to explain the relationship between the x and y values. In other words, what do I do to x to get my y? On 19, use the relationship to write the equation for that rule. And finally, on your own, you need to complete 20, 21, and 22. This is what you will be graded on. Please have this done tomorrow morning before class, and if you are struggling, please do not hesitate to ask for help. Have a good evening and work well.